go.
Okay, great.
Perfect.
So thanks very much. And this is a pretty exclusive crowd of two here today. So if you can feel free to unmute yourselves and ask questions. I know both Steve and I love questions. And while we have an idea about what it is that we want to tell you, um, it's very possible you want to hear stuff that we didn't think of. So feel free to chirp in. I cannot see the chat right now because my presentation's up on my screens. So if you put something in the chat, other Steve can see it, I believe. And then, like I say, go ahead and unmute yourself and speak up if you like. Here you see everybody's logo, and yay. This is Steve and Steve, the faces that you saw just a minute ago. Here's a little stuff about us, but as it turns out, Gabrielle just told you all this stuff. I'll just drop in another tidbit, and that is, when I started a data recovery company, I didn't intend to do that. I started a floppy disk drive repair company, and within a month, Bobby Brown's manager from Fantasy Records came in with a 10 megabyte hard drive. That's like some millionth of what we have in hard drives today. And it was crashed and all his talent was on there. So that's actually what got me started doing data recovery, which led me to doing computer forensics. Steve, you want to comment on Gabby's introduction and what's up here?
Yeah, so I started off at Applied Magnetics in 1983, and they made magnetic heads for floppy disks, tape drives, as well as hard disk drives. So 10 megabyte hard drives were like a big thing. 30 megabytes was a big thing, and at that time. So we look at today's drives and we're doing terabytes and not even thinking twice about it, having it in our notebooks. It's really changed in just the last 35 years.
I love being in a field that changes like every week. We've both been in this business 40 years or so, and every week there's something new, literally every week. So I find that to be pretty cool. Probably similar to you, Steve?
Yes. I mean, you find now that people, 20 years ago, we weren't putting as much data. Companies weren't storing as much data because it costs so much to do. And now data storage has become so cheap that they collect information on everything, and they call it metadata, which means it's like a subset of the data. But the truth is that there's a lot of information in that metadata that wouldn't have been in the metadata, say, 20 years ago.
And of course, go ahead.
On.
No, you go.
So there's this opportunity for people to exploit that data that companies have, and both large, small, and medium-sized companies have. And that's why cybersecurity has become more and more important each year.
And I, like most of us, have loads of crap on my computer that I could probably sort out, but the storage is practically free. So probably like many of you, I don't. So first, I'm going to mention that 90% when the COVID hit, 90% of American companies had people working from home. Most of us here are probably solopreneurs or run small companies, and a lot of us are working from home. A year ago, 74% of American companies said that their employees were going to keep working from home, and 42% of them said they would quit if they can't keep working home. As it turns out, about 27% of us are still working from home now. And I work at home. I try and work at home one day a week also. You guys, do you work from home? Speak up. Or chat up. I can't actually see the chat screen.
No, I don't work from home.
Oh, good. Anyone else? Okay. So I'm going to address a little bit of the working from home issues, and that is, a lot of our homes and some of our offices have smart sensors built in. It can be controlled from any place on the inner tubes, and security, lighting, temperature, locks, all kinds of stuff. I don't have a smart house. I keep my house pretty dumb. In fact, until recently, the only smart thing in my house was my dog, and my iPhone, and which thinks I'm talking to it when I'm not. I like say, "Oh, my steering's off a little," and blah de blah, and my phone says, "I couldn't find bloody blah blah in your Audible library." And I did recently get a TV, which it turns out is a smart TV. And so it does weird things. Plus the cat steps on the clicker. So, maybe the cat's the smart one. But there's lots of internet connected devices. A lot of people do not, both in business and at home, leave the default password, which is, documented online. There was quite a scandal a year or two ago about people, getting into people's baby monitors and posting videos of random strangers' babies asleep, which is pretty scary. Danielle, I see you do hybrid home and work as well. By the way, as do I. I'm just noticing the chat because I discovered how to have the chat and I can have my PowerPoint and chat and eat it too. So yeah, so the first thing is, it's never a good idea to have the default password, and it's certainly a good idea to have a password, period. So one is better than the other, and now you see it properly, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so I am not going to try and see the chat window at the same time.
Please don't. I will read the chat off to you.
Thank you. It looks to me like there is one comment in the chat that I can see that there is a comment.
Yes, that was just Danielle telling you that nice to know you are like us.
Oh, all righty. So if you have let me just go back one. Yeah. So there are devices that are always listening, strangely enough. And well, there's the Echo, there's your phone, there's your TV, there's the human, and a lot of them have accidental trigger words. So, besides Hey Siri or Hey Google or Alexa, there are thousands of words that will accidentally cause your device to listen. Like for Alexa, unacceptable, election, a letter, all excellent. They all make your Alexa turn on. There's a hilarious Saturday Night Live video I recommend you look up on YouTube. Just look up SNL Alexa. It's pretty darn funny. And a Google Home, you can say, okay, cool. Okay, who is reading? Okay, those things will make your Google Home turn on. With Siri, what I already said, or hey Jerry, or hey seriously, or that's scary. I've had my phone say things to me all the time. I'm like, I'm not talking to you, Siri. Cortana, things like frittata, Montana. My girlfriend, when she's talking to me, she tells her Alexa, turn on the living room lights. And just for fun, I said, Alexa, turn off the living room lights, and it listened to me. So if you like, ask Gabrielle, and I will send a document that I haven't put together yet that tells how to make some of these things stop listening, except for the human. So I want to talk about phishing a little bit. So phishing is when somebody fools you into giving away information. In many cases, it'll be client data or company data. I've had numerous cases where people were fooled into thinking that a request from a bank was real. I've had at least 3 cases where there's over $1 million at stake, where they authorized a payment to a stranger because they thought it was real. So I'm going to give you a little phishing quiz of 5 questions that the FTC has. So you can put your answers in the chat. You ready? Here we go. I know at least one of you is on audio, so I'm going to read these off. Which one of these statements is correct? A, you get an email that looks like it's from someone you know. You can click on any links as long as you have a spam blocker and antivirus protection. B, You can trust an email that really comes from a client if it uses the client's logo and contains at least one fact about the client that you know to be true. C, if you get a message from a colleague who needs your network password, you should never give it out unless the colleague says it's an emergency. And D, if you get an email from human resources asking you to provide personal information right away, you should check it out first to make sure they are who they say they are. So, answers, please. You can just say them, or you can put them in the chat.
D.
D is correct. You should check it out first to make they are who they say they are. So one good way to check it out to see if they are who they say they are is to call the human resources department. Is probably the best way, or walk down the hall if they're nearby. Okay, second one. An email from your boss asks for the name, address, and credit card information of the company's top clients. The email says it's urgent and to please reply right away. You should reply right away. True or false? Anyone? I see there's things going up in the chat. I see
Stacy
false.
says false.
Stacy is right. And I know that this maybe sounds a little odd, but I've had just those issues show up with forensic investigations I've been involved in. Here's the third one. You get a text message from a vendor who asks you to click on a link to renew your password so you can log into its website. You should A, reply to confirm that you really need to renew your password. B, pick up the phone and call the vendor using a phone number you know to be correct to confirm that the request is real. Or C, click on the link. If it takes you to the vendor's website, then you know it's not a scam. Anyone? Danielle says
B.
B. B is correct. Stacy, you're also correct. Gold stars all around. Fourth and next to last one, email authentication can help protect against phishing attacks. True or false? It's a toughie. Okay, it's true. It can help, but it's not bulletproof. It's not bulletproof. So it's kind of true and kind of false. And that's because you can do a further investigation to determine whether or not you've been phished. But you know, the thing to do is to go back to contacting a known number or a known website without clicking on any links. Finally, if you fall for a phishing scam, what should you do to limit the damage? Delete the phishing email. B, unplug the computer. This will get rid of any malware. Or C, change any compromised passwords. Danielle says C, and Stacy says C. You're both correct. Although A doesn't hurt, you're both correct. The answer is C. Okay. And that, by the way, is courtesy of the FTC. That's on their website. So there is one way, and again, Steve Saucier is going to tell you about ways to make me wrong, I hope. But there's one way to keep your data secure, and that is don't be connected to the internet. So the question is it really all that bad? And the fact of the matter is there's some concrete steps that you can take to minimize your exposure. And again, Steve's going to tell you other stuff that's probably more useful than this. So I'm going to go through this semi-quickly. So there's a couple things. You can get a firewall, and most of them are expensive. And you can use the best kind of password on your router that it has. And not all routers have all different levels of security, but you can ask your vendor. They're the authority on it. Also, you want to do updates and patches. Now, there's a caveat, right? So for instance, my iMac that I'm using right now wants to, whenever there's an upgrade, it wants to do an upgrade. And it'll try and do an upgrade. But, you know, my iMac is a few years old and it can't handle the last one or two upgrades to the Mac OS. And if it can handle it, my database will not will break if I update to the latest. So you want to check as far as the ability of your existing programs to run under the updates. Mac OS is sort of famous for breaking some apps. Windows not so much, and Android and iPhone iOS not so much. Otherwise, you want to keep things updated. You want to subscribe to patches. The other thing is with Windows is it likes to update things when I'm in the middle of running a program all weekend. So you want to be sure you check your scheduling for that. You also want to use, although, Google's now trying to have us not have to use a password, which I think would be great. You want to use secure passwords, and there are a few ways to make secure passwords, and there's lots of ways to have insecure passwords. So insecure password is using any dictionary word by itself, or using a dictionary word with another dictionary word that comes after it, like dictionary and word together. No dates, nobody's name, no favorite colors, no favorite teams, none of that stuff. All that stuff is very guessable, especially if you're on social media. Long, incredibly complex passwords are useful, but you're never going to remember $7% blah, 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 blah. So what I do, and that is a picture of if my desk was really neatened up, this picture would be what my desk looks like. So what I would do is grab 3 of the items from there. So coffee, and there's crumpled up paper, and there's a calculator. So I do coffee, crumple, calc, and then a number, and then a character. That is a password nobody's ever going to guess. So, and then if you have a list of passwords, you can just give yourself hints as to what it is to help you remember, instead of, for instance, a Post-it note on your screen that says, your birthday.
You'd be
yes.
surprised at how many people do that, though.
Yeah, it is surprising. And also, the most common password for phones is 1234, unless it's a 6-character, in which case it's 123456, or like Kanye West, as we saw when he exposed his phone in a photo across the desk from Donald Trump, 000000 is the second most common. And the most common password for computers is password. Still.
Yeah, I mean, and we find that most routers are not password protected, by the way.
And that is
small businesses.
Go ahead.
No, we find that most routers are not password protected on small businesses. They have, it's about it's at least 2/3 of the routers we look at have like admin as their password, or they have the default password that the ISP set them up with, or it has password. That's another big one, or password 123.
And that's a really important point. So thank you for mentioning that. There are online data vaults. They do occasionally get compromised. By and large, their databases are salted, so that compromising their databases probably doesn't expose your password. But I know that LastPass has had at least one of those incidents where some passwords were exposed. This little bit of text at the bottom I should make bigger, and I encourage you to write this down and check it out. If you go to that PWNED is pwned, it's a pwnage word. So if you go to haveibeenpwned.com/passwords, it is it's a safe website. You can put in your email address, and it will tell you where it's likely to have been registered and when those things were compromised. It'll give you a report more or less just like what you see here. I recommend you use it. Don't ever give anybody your password. It always says this on everything, and people share their passwords anyway. if you're sharing your password with someone, they might accidentally share it with someone else, especially if it's clever. Orange funny clown, bad password, and a really easy one that someone will want to share. Don't share your social security number in business. Hopefully you get a FEIN, federal tax ID number instead of your social security number, even as a sole proprietorship. You can get that for your business. Social security number is often step one to compromising your information and to identity fraud. Everybody asks for it, and you don't have to give it to almost anyone. You have to give it to the government. You have to give it to your bank or whoever's lending you money. You have to give it to your employer. That's about it. I know that almost every single time I've gone into a doctor and filled out a onboarding form, or a dentist, it always asks for it. And I often just write in there, if there's room, you shouldn't be asking me this because I'm a punk, but you can just put NA or put a big X in there. They don't have a right to your social security number.
And neither do the police, by the way.
That's good. That's good news too. I actually hadn't thought of that.
I challenged it one time when I was filling out a police report for a house that had been broken into. And they asked for my social security number, and I said no.
The police
The
have
guy
never
goes,
asked for
"Well-"
my social security number when I was arrested. Oh, I didn't say that. Never mind.
Okay, well, I wasn't
Now-
arrested, but then when I challenged it, the cop said, well, the truth is we can't demand it. We can't even if we arrest you, we can't demand it. So
That's good. That's good. Good on you. There's a data encryption. Here are some ways that data gets encrypted. Modern Macs are the bane of computer forensic people because the level of encryption is high. Wow, Danielle, that is, am I mispronouncing your name? I'm pronouncing it Danielle, but I guess it's Danelle. Danelle, yeah, that's awful. It's a good idea to challenge those things. Okay, so here's some things that you can use. Sometimes it's good to have more than one. Other times, different kinds of encryption software or malware protection do not play well with each other. So, hey, we've been doing this for about 35 minutes. So, how about we take a 5-minute break, and we'll come back in 5 minutes, okay?
Sounds great.
And bring the rest of the people.
bring the rest of the people.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, guys.
I can hear you. I just needed to unmute myself.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So hopefully we're all back, and we'll go on to the next bit. So some ways of helping with your computer now, not with your mobile device. Some ways of helping to see whether or not you're secure is to go to grc.com. By the way, GRC is run by another guy named Steve, who's been around since 20 megabyte drives were around. He had a utility that checked the surface media and moved things around, which happens kind of automatically now. So, but he's still around, I'm happy to say. So you can go to Shields Up. Also, they have a way of checking for fingerprinting. And if you go there, it'll tell how to use this. But the point is if the domain name, which is in the first column there, you see how it goes grc.com, facebook.com, paypal.com, and so forth. If it matches the certificate name, if they don't match, by and large, your browser is going to notice that, but you can check that also. So then I would say everybody knows about phishing scams, but seeing as people still get caught by them, I want to address it. It's especially important in business because, like I say, I've had at least 3 cases where over $1 million was lost. Fortunately, one of them, insurance company covered it. One of them, the bank covered it. And the third one, they lost and got fired. So something that's common is subtle misspellings and fake domains. So you see the first one there says chasebunk.com. Well, the guy who ended up losing his money, there was like somebody's name that was the name of the finance officer at chasebunk.com. And everything looked real on that, except for he didn't notice that there was a missing letter. And that domain had been registered like 2 days before with the sole intent of catching somebody in a phishing scam, and they sure did. Also, if it doesn't have the domain name of the company. So on the last one, you see that's the www.urbl.com/Apple. That is not an Apple site. It would have to say apple.com. Also, you'll want to see something like a little lock on up in the corner of your browser, which will suggest at least that this is secure. Of course, if it is secure and it's got a valid certificate, but you can still have a fake domain like that. There's any number of scams. There's some dead guy left you money. I mean, obviously it works because I see these every day, a whole bunch of them every day. One of them that I kind of fell for one time is that it was so identical to my bank, and I just visited my bank. I actually clicked on the link. The only time I did that, lucky for me, something felt fishy, even though it looked authentic when I clicked on the link and I got off and checked with the bank, and sure enough, they hadn't sent me that stuff. I have a $500,000 check that was sent to my bank by someone trying to get my bank account information. If you get a pre-approved credit card and they want you to pay the annual fee first, I've had several friends fall for people that they thought they were in love with online and who wanted money. And guess what? They disappeared. And a lot of times there will be a pop-up on your screen that says, you've got an antivirus problem. One of my neighbors, I'm 68, so I'm a senior, but one of my neighbors had one of these, and he ended up paying $3,000 in iTunes cards to pay for this guy supposedly fixing his problems. And so people fall for this all the time, and it might seem unbelievable, but some of us might be embarrassed that we might have been taken in by one of these things. Also on Facebook all the time, there are people pop up they haven't been hacked, just someone else put up a fake Facebook profile with their same name and their pictures. They scrape their friends' contact information, and then started either acquiring friends or asked for money. And I've had it was nice to see a note from a high school friend who I hadn't seen in years, although she wasn't in London and didn't need money from me. So one of the things to do is shop only at websites you know and trust. I mean, there's more than 1 billion sites on the internet, and it's easy to pick and choose. It's useful to consistently shop with one that you know about. You can do some research as to whether or not some are scams, but the easiest way is to only go to the ones you know and trust. I realize it sounds like a catch-22. You got to get there at some point, but it's still strong advice. There are fake coronavirus sites. There were so many that started up a couple of years ago. In fact, as of a year ago, there are 250,000 coronavirus scam sites, and there are 150,000 domains that were supposedly getting you stimulus checks. There are any number of scams, phishing scams. All these sites are much more likely to install malware. There's provider scams, there's charity scams, there's treatment scams, to try and sell you medical supplies or cures. Obviously, you need to do your due diligence, and everybody here is smart enough to do that. So you can just tell this to everyone else. There are fake pandemic maps. There are so many of these things. Any opportunity, people are going to take, unfortunately. So next thing that comes up, I'm sure right now for any wars that are going on in the world, there are tens of thousands of donation websites. Go to a charity you know. So ransomware. Ransomware isn't always well understood, so I'm going to talk about it a little bit. First thing is, one way to avoid it is to, like say, do your updates and patches, have an antivirus and anti-malware software installed. Incidentally, Windows 10 and Windows 11, the default Windows antivirus program is pretty good compared to the third-party ones. There's firewalls, basic security, endpoint security. These are things I'm sure Steve will talk about. Yeah.
Yes, I will be talking about those. And you're
Okay.
right. Windows Defender has come a long way. It's I mean, there are third-party apps that are better than Windows Defender, but Windows Defender is much better than what the OEMs pre-install on your system.
Yeah, it used to be a joke, and now I don't think it is, at least for now. It changes every year, in my opinion. For the longest time, Norton Antivirus was my go-to. Then it started playing poorly with McAfee and crashing computers. And then it started being so full of code that it wouldn't almost even let your computer run. So
Right.
every year you may find something's different. So Steve and I both agree that Windows Defender right now and last year, pretty good. Maybe next year, not so much. We'll see. It keeps changing.
I still recommend having a strong endpoint protection antivirus app installed, and not just go with Windows Defender. There are apps that don't take any resources, they have very small footprint, and they're far more effective than Microsoft's Windows Defender.
I agree. Hey, would you explain that term footprint for our audience?
Is that, I mean, endpoint protection?
No, footprint. You said it has a very small
footprint. Okay,
That's kind of a
so
techie term.
yeah, sorry about that. So by footprint, I mean is it has a very small file size. The size of the file is small. The amount of resources it needs to use are very small because it's cloud-based, and it has this AI normally all the memory and CPU you'd use to do the scanning most of that's being done up in the cloud. So it has a small footprint, and yet it's running continuously without causing any troubles for normal computer operation. And you can I'll be going that in my presentation into more detail, but there's some really good programs out there that are the latest generation, best of breed, and that's kind of what I would go for. In fact, they're even good at detecting ransomware, by the way.
And what's interesting, I mentioned, and you're going to mention some more, maybe some perspectives that we have that are different. To me, from a forensic perspective, a small footprint means it's not writing much data to your device. So interesting, because you just educated me too, Steve. And then links in email. Basically, although I send people links in email, I still encourage you not to click on a link in an email, rather to go to the website yourself or to copy it, paste it into a text box, and make sure it looks real.
Advice.
I'm sorry, this is a little bit dated, but if you want to take a screenshot of this, if you happen to catch, and there's still an incredible amount of COVID fraud happening. It's just more current kinds of fraud are on the rise, and this is perhaps fading into the background a little bit compared to everything else, but it's not going away. Okay, so ransomware. Basically, you don't want to pay ransomware. Why? Well, there's a couple reasons. One is you don't want to encourage the ransomware person. That may not be your personal problem then, though, but also they may just not give you the key to decrypt it. They do a lot of the time. A lot of the time, however, it's a whole lot of money. You want to restore from a good backup, which means you have to have a good backup. And if you have a good backup, that means you've checked it. Not that you just had a backup that happened automatically, but that from time to time you restore some of the data. I've been doing data recovery for almost 40 years, and everybody doesn't back up their data. Sometimes nobody backs up their data all the time, but just about nobody checks their backup to make sure that A, they've got the data backed up that they really need, and B, that they're able to restore it. So I recommend that. Obviously, don't provide personal information to the ransomware. Use reputable antivirus software like we were just talking about, updates and patches. Gmail is pretty good. It's actually it's a little too good at detecting most malware. Ends up making stuff look suspicious that's not, but still, if you've got a means of scanning your email, which again, I believe Steve will talk about, then do so. And then use VPNs when you're on the road, virtual private networks that kind of anonymize stuff a little bit. Steve mentioned that people don't even change their router password. WPS is too easy to get into. SSID is the name of your router that it advertises, you know, Steve's router in the kitchen fridge. If you're not going to be doing remote administration, which probably none of us are going to be doing practically, turn that option off. Update your firmware whenever you can, and ask your vendor about how to make it the most secure, because they're, you know, probably the authorities on it. With regard to public Wi-Fi, you go to a hotel, you go to a airport, there's going to be public Wi-Fi to hook up to. That's going to be free. A lot of that stuff is fake. One time, just to show my kids, we were in a hotel room, we were on the road on our way to vacation. He said, "Hey, look at this." And there were 11 Wi-Fi hotspots that I could have hooked up to. It's exposing my stuff to them. So
Right.
if you're at an airport, see if you can find a human host or a posting on the airport's website that says the name of their public Wi-Fi, and use a VPN. There's so many ways to back up your data. Belt and suspenders is good with data backup. Here are just some of them. And I think it's important to have a cloud backup for your most current and most important stuff, and have a local backup for everything. The data storage is cheap right now. Cheap.
Very
Okay.
cheap. And
So,
getting cheaper. Well,
yes.
one thing I would point out, I don't use public Wi-Fi if I can absolutely avoid it, or even in the hotels. I have a phone that has unlimited data, so I just set up a hotspot with my phone and do it that way. If I'm concerned about, you know, privacy.
Yeah, I think that's a very good idea. It's a very good idea. And a lot more secure than most other things.
Yeah. And I use VPN anyway, so that's true. It's probably an overkill.
Well, belt and suspenders and super glue.
There you go. Belt, suspenders, and super glue. Yeah.
So audience, I've talked a lot. Steve's talked a little. He's going to talk a lot more. We're telling you stuff we think is important to know. But please, if you got any questions now, you can type them in the chat or unmute yourself and ask a question. So I'm going to wait a minute or so to give you the opportunity about that, about anything that we've already said, or about anything we haven't addressed yet. Hey, Mark, get set, ask.
I have a quick question about email attachments. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfectly.
Hi, this is Danelle. I just wanted to check and see. I understand that Google is restricting, or at least I've experienced that they're restricting zip files as attachments. I often have reports that I need to send to other providers that include photos and such, and the fastest, or excuse me, the most compact way seems to be in a zip file. Do you have any recommendations on that? Thank you.
I wasn't aware of that, so I love being educated. So thank you for that.
I wasn't
Yeah,
aware of that either.
you know, you may have to put it into a PDF. A PDF actually makes it bigger. So rather than putting a bunch of files into a zip file to make them smaller and more convenient, you know, you may need to put it into a PDF and send them individually, or use Dropbox or ShareFile or services like that, that unfortunately, after a small amount of data, you have to pay for. But if you're regularly sending data like this, it might be worth paying for sort of the low end of things. Steve, you got any suggestions about that?
Yeah, I mean, I've used FTP sites to load things up to, and there's different ways to do it. No, I don't have anything else to really add to it that would be of value.
Danelle, do you have a further question with regard to that, or do you want to maybe curse a little bit, or?
I do want to curse a little bit and then ask Dropbox, would that be a secure location? This is HIPAA type of information, important sensitive information to people's, not identity, but just sensitive information. Is Dropbox secure enough?
I have two answers to that. Answer number one, encrypt it and separately send the people an encryption key. And number two, unfortunately, ask Dropbox. Are they HIPAA compliant, or what level of Dropbox do you have to be HIPAA compliant?
That's great answers. Both.
Those are good
Thank you.
questions to ask. There are some, if you want to, there are some services that you can use that are very inexpensive, that cover more than one, I think up to 5 devices, and you can send encrypted messages safely by using those, or encrypted content. I would recommend that over Dropbox, but I think Steve's question is a good one. Ask them if they're HIPAA compliant.
Okay, thank you. And if
And which
anyone else,
version.
if anyone else were to have this type of issue, I do understand that what's the new Google work? The form of email that you can subscribe to, Workplace, is that what it's called? You can check a HIPAA compliant box, but that's a subscription, just so anyone knows.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're paying for that too. Yeah.
Although not so much. I mean, it's not expensive. I'm going to read you something on my phone for what it's worth from Dropbox. Dropbox makes it easy to adopt the digital and technical tools that help enable your business to be HIPAA and high-tech compliant. Try free for 30 days or talk to. So I'd do with that last option, talk to.
Thank you. Didn't look that up.
Any other questions from anyone else? We got plenty of time.
I'm going to take and I'm going to send a link that you could also use to a thing called file share.
Yeah. And there's also ShareFile.
ShareFile, maybe that's what they're called. Let's see. I copied it's ShareFile. Anyways, it's www.sharefile.com. I have to do that for I did a direct to you, not a general. My bad.
That's okay. Gabby put it up.
Okay.
So Also, there are a lot of mail servers that won't accept a zip file. So it's not just whether it's HIPAA compliant or not. I have plenty of clients that'll go, oh, send me all those things. I'll send all those things and it'll bounce back. And it's because their server won't allow a zip file. Some of them don't allow PDFs, so I just have to read it to them. I'm joking about having to read it to them. Any other questions for now? Anyone? Okay, so Steve, you're gonna have to say, oh, you wanna, oh, you can't do my,
I'll just do it the old fashioned way. I'll ask you to change it. Or hit
okay,
the next slide.
that'll keep me on my toes.
Okay. So here's a question I had. What's the most common cause of cyber attacks? Is it your router is not password protected? Hardware security patches haven't been updated. Someone left the coffee maker unplugged overnight. Employee error. There is a weak password on your computer. All of the office devices are on a single network.
Maybe 5.
Okay. So the answer to that is number 4. Employee error represents, it depends on who you talk to. It can be anywhere from 85% to 95% of all cyber attacks are initiated with human error. I go with 90%. And with small businesses, the number 2 issue is the fact that you have passwords that aren't, you have routers that are not password protected. That's kind of what we're seeing is number 2 is that routers are not password protected.
If I can just drop a note in here with larger companies and to a certain extent with small companies, it's not just employee error, but employees doing things they ought not to do on purpose.
True. Yeah, that's true. Employees bezel money. They do other, they've been doing that for many decades, long before, well, many centuries, embezzling money. There's things that employees do that can wreak havoc. So it's good to have employees have limited access.
In
to
Neolithic
stuff they don't
times,
need.
I understand that they stole each other's saber-toothed tiger fangs. So it's been
Okay.
going on a while.
Yeah. So if you could go to the next slide, Steve.
Oops. Yep.
Okay, and then the next one. Okay, so why are small businesses the #1 victim of cyber attacks? And the answer is it's less work. They're extremely vulnerable, so it's less work. Plus, it's less risky. Law enforcement is unlikely to get involved or intervene in it because the numbers are too small. They'll be all over somebody like, and that equals higher payoff, the profitability, the return on investment's higher with small businesses. They're easy, quick. You can go after them. If you want to find out what IBM's doing in a lawsuit, for instance, it's easier to hack the lawyer's office than it is to hack IBM and try to find that information out. You can go to the lawyer's office directly and get a lot more, as an example. So there is some, some of the people that have law firms and they think, well, I'll know who's going to go after me. I'm a one-person office. Often they're absolutely wrong. That's the first place they go. Could you go to the next one, Steve?
Yeah, I'd like to drop something in here, by the way,
Sure.
with regard to law enforcement. I get lots and lots and lots of people. Every week I get people who either have been hacked or think they've been hacked. I'm not sure whether the majority have been or think they have been, but law enforcement is not going to take a hacking case unless one of about 5 different conditions have been met. And this is just because, resources are limited. Excuse me. If there is $1,000 or more of property or cash that's been stolen, if there's a violation of a restraining order, if there's a direct threat to your life or health, not an implied one, like you're gonna get it, doesn't count. I'm gonna stab you in the face tomorrow does. If there's a threat to Homeland Security, if there's a threat to children, including illegal images of children, and then sometimes they'll take it if there's an expert report showing that the computer's been compromised and hopefully how. So that kind of fits in with what you were saying over there.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. I mean, when I've looked at it, I haven't found a lot of evidence that says they'll go after, if the ransomware amount is under 100 grand, it's hard to get their attention to investigate that in earnest. But if it's several $1 million, the FBI will definitely get involved and work on it hard. I mean, there's just that kind of, and there have been people here in town that have been hit with ransomware, and attacks and have paid it. Some have not gotten their data back. Some have gotten it back. But what's been guaranteed is in all cases, their data has been copied. In other words, stolen. A copy's been made. And the perpetrators have walked away with that. And sometimes they come back for double ransomware, which is they'll ask you to pay the money not to publish your client's information, as an example. Could you go to the next one, please?
Yeah, I was just going to say it's different with property. I had an employee who walked away with about a dozen microprocessors, and
Okay.
they were all over him.
Yeah, those are usually easier than trying to go after hackers in Russia or China.
Yeah, yeah.
Why do 75% of the businesses not have a cybersecurity plan? I'll tell you, there's like 6 good reasons for that, or 5. They wrongly believe they're too small to be of interest to cyber criminals. They often can't afford expensive one-size-fits-all service plans offered by most MSPs, so they go without. I'll give you an example. I won't mention the company's names, but there's 6 companies in this area who 2 of them won't take on a client unless they pay $1,500 a month or more, and then the rest they expect $1,700 a month. That's their minimum. Well, one of them actually gets $1,750. So, you hear those kind of numbers, and a lot of small business owners go, "Well, I can't afford that." And so, anyway, go to the next one.
Oops.
And then the other one is small businesses use online services. These online service platforms are great. They provide a very safe and way to transmit documents, such as Intuit for CPAs, and Clio for lawyers, who's also Practice Master for lawyers. But they wrongly assume that they're now that they've put all their services in the cloud, that they're immune to a cyber attack, and that cyber criminals can't steal their client information or corrupt it, and that's wrong. Because if you can access it, so can a cyber criminal, and they just have to figure out how you do it. And they don't have the other problem is that a lot of small businesses don't have the technical knowledge to understand what they need, or whether they're getting what they need in a cybersecurity services from the MSPs who they're paying money to. And so in some cases, I've seen people paying as much as $2,000 a month and not getting the cybersecurity services. There was a company here in town that was paying that and got attacked with ransomware twice in a 2-year period of time. Next slide. So what you see is, in summary, approximately 60% of the people have no plan in place at all, and they just do break fix. They pick up the phone if something's not working, they call an IT guy and get it fixed, or they take it into Best Buy and have the Geek Squad fix it for them.
Yep, the all-time pros.
Yep, and then some people pay maintenance agreements, but they pay for these maintenance agreements, but there's no real cybersecurity plan in place inside those agreements. I mean, things like, it's amazing, you know, there's no backup, things like that. There's just some of the basic stuff. As you mentioned earlier, backup is very important, and actually performing restores occasionally is an important thing to do. And if you're paying somebody for a service, they should be doing those things. And about 23% have actually some sort of cybersecurity plan in place. Next slide. What are the 5 basic services? Well, you should do network vulnerability. That's required by the IRS/FTC. Also, it's required for HIPAA. And known vulnerabilities are still one of the most common ways cyber criminals gain access to your sensitive information. Employee training, as I mentioned earlier, 90% of all cyber attacks are initiated through human error. And there again, HIPAA and the IRS require a minimum of once a year training. The best training is monthly because it keeps people vigilant. I have 85% here. Because anyway, go on. Next generation endpoint protection. That's basically what you want, is detection and response. We talked about this earlier. The IRS clearly, the way they define their requirements clearly indicates that that's what they want, is they want next generation antivirus. The other 2 standards are a little more vague, and you could get by with Windows Defender, but with the IRS requirements, you cannot get by with Windows Defender. It won't meet the bar that they've set. Some solutions offer up to a 72-hour rollback. And what that means is that if these solutions are designed to try to detect the virus in the day it happens, the day that new virus is introduced to the environment, whether it's introduced on your desktop or somebody else's desktop, they try to detect that immediately within hours, and if files have been encrypted in the form of a new ransomware attack, or they've been damaged or deleted, those files can be restored back to what they were prior to that. And makes it a lot simpler and easier for people to recover from an attack, and it's something that I recommend.
So
Also,
Steve,
go on.
I just wanted to ask, so 0 day really means the first day?
Correct.
You
don't have to wait a day before you get it. It happens, and that's what 0 day detection refers to. And the cloud, this is really important. You need to back up, and the IRS and the GLBA and HIPAA all require that you do an offsite backup. If you can pull up the next one, Steve, or the next.
Oh, yep.
They all require that you have it, and they say offsite storage, and really what they're referring to is cloud storage. And the reason for that is that even if it's not a cyber attack, if you have a natural disaster like a flood, like we had buildings that were flooded here, you have tornadoes, earthquakes, typhoons and hurricanes. They can destroy it. You can lose that data. You can lose those patient or client records. And that's why they ask that you use a secure way of offsite of securing those documents.
Can I drop a comment in here, Steve?
Yes, please.
It's possible, of course, to have a copy of your data on a hard drive in the shop and take one home. But of course, the disadvantages of those are A, could get broken going home. B, you're not going to do it. And to have it in the cloud, it can be running while you're not using your computer.
Right.
So that's
It's very simple. Yeah, and there's some really inexpensive ones. There's no reason not to do it. There's some commercial versions. There's a commercial version of Carbonite, for instance, that has unlimited amount of backup, so you're not getting nickeled and dimed to death. And for as little as $15 a month, you can back up a workstation or a server, just the files, but you can back those up, and it's happening every hour. They do a complete backup, and then they do incremental backups every hour. So as to avoid losing data should something happen, right? Whatever that might be, natural or man-made. And I'm a big backup guy because I used to work for Veritas, and that was their thing. And I really believe in having a good disaster recovery plan that protects your business continuity. How long can you go without your data? You got to ask yourself that. If you can go 3 weeks without your data, file backup is great. Just simple file cloud backup is great. But if you need to have your data within 3 hours, then you need a completely different plan in place. And the cost, of course, goes up exponentially. Secure router. Everybody needs a secure router. And Steve did a good job of mentioning that earlier. There's some routers that would be that are okay to use, definitely. But it's better to have a router professionally set up, and so that you have more than one network. You have isolated networks. Don't give you're not giving your password out to the network that you're using for work, right? Your work stuff. And if you're a little bit bigger business, you want to have multiple ones. If you have security cameras, they're on their own. You have your workstations on one, and you have guests on another. And you isolate it. You have your alarm system on another. I can tell a horror story about a company that spent a lot of money. They spent over $200,000 on physical security, and they hired us to go do a cybersecurity assessment because somebody in their industry got robbed, and they knew these people, and they were scared, and so they hired us to do it. And we found that their ISP did not put a password on there. It was admin. That was the password. And they created a public Wi-Fi hotspot that didn't require a password for some reason. And you could sit out on the curb outside the building and access their network. They also set everything up on one network, so you could go in there. And then they had bad Wi-Fi bad phone coverage, and so the people would ask for the Wi-Fi password, and they'd hand it out. That was another thing. But
Speaking of that,
if you got on their network, you could look at the cameras, see where everything was, disable the cameras, open the doors. They had the workstation that was running the door locks was connected to the network. And you could also disable the alarm system.
in my forensic work, I get criminal cases, and in some of the cases, there was illegal information going over a router. They grabbed the IP address of the router, submitted it with a subpoena to the internet service provider, the ISP, and they fingered the wrong person because someone was in a house nearby or in an alley in back or out on the street using their Wi-Fi. It turns out that that's not proof, but it certainly is an opening point to cause a lot of problems. So even if you're not too concerned about that, that might be something else to be concerned about, that someone else can be using your Wi-Fi without your permission, and it could implicate you in a crime.
That's a good point to bring up, Steve. That is, because that's a perfect way for a criminal to cover their tracks and do illegal things that they shouldn't be doing on the internet. Yeah. Very good point. Very good point. And then there's some other services as well. We touched on one of these earlier, which is when Office 365. For a lot of small businesses are using Office 365, and there's some security in Office 365 that helps you, reduce the threat from emails, phishing emails, and also keep a lot of the junk mails out of your view. In addition to that, there's a thing called data loss protection. It's a feature in there that you can enable if you're running, and it's HIPAA compliant, by the way. You use this and you can stop. We have clients, there's CPAs who are using this because they have, during tax time, they have a lot of CPAs come in for the season and to start working, and they start transmitting people's social securities and stuff via email. So you can, this will shut that down. Anyway, then there's also having a cloud managed router and security services that go with that. And it's something we recommend for, doctors' offices, dentists, and so forth.
There's a lot of individuals, like I mentioned, that contact me that have been hacked or believe they've been hacked. And your services that you offer here is in the price range that's affordable for an individual who's been under this kind of threat, I think.
Right. I mean, our services start at $200. Good question. They start at $200 a month for a home office, and then they go up from there depending upon what you add to them and what you need. Our prices are extremely reasonable and affordable. Most of the services we have are automated services, so I don't have a lot of labor in them because we're using cloud-based IA and stuff like that. Or AI, excuse me, not IA.
I see this looks like a last slide, but it looks like there's a couple more and we have time. Would you like to hit the other couple?
Sure. Let's go to the next one. Everybody hears about the cloud, and I get asked frequently, what is the cloud? Especially by my relatives. And this is a facility. They show building 8 and 9. They actually have something like almost 100 of them out there now. And I've been to these facilities, a couple of these. I haven't been to 8 and 9, but I was in 23, 31, and another one I can't remember. But anyway, and they're, these are colos. If you see those red boxes on the side there, the top with the fins, those are the air conditioning systems. And that's basically what the cloud is. It's a data center. It has racks in it, as you can see below. And simply that's where they have, it's a data center and with racks, and that's the cloud. The one client in particular, there were some others, but the one client in particular that I worked with on this was Hulu, and they were buying colo space from these people. I say colo, I mean, basically they're buying, it's like renting a condo, kind of a condo space, I think with that terms. And they had space in 3 different buildings by the time we were done providing them racks. And that was just in Las Vegas. They also had one out on the East Coast as well.
When people ask me what the cloud storage is, I just tell them it's somebody else's computer.
There you go.
The first time I heard it, it was I don't know who remembers Sun Microsystems, but the first time I heard it publicly uttered was by Mark Andreessen of Sun Microsystems, and he had this idea that things would be in a cloud, and now in diagrams of networks, there are little clouds in there. There are no angels flying out of the clouds, but anyway, yeah, cloud is somebody else's computer.
I did not know that's where that originated. I learned something new today.
I think it is. The first time I heard it.
And I think the next slide is really our mission statement, which is to provide affordable, future Fortune 500 level cybersecurity to small businesses, and that normally would be out of the reach of them due to the technical resources required to support them and or the cost of the services themselves. And every good cybersecurity solution has to accept the fact that it can be hacked. You can build a perfect mousetrap, and a hacker the next day will figure out how to hack it. So any solution you have has to keep evolving, keep moving forward, keep finding ways to be better than it was yesterday. And so that's part of our mission statement, is to keep evolving our solution and making it stronger as we go.
I think that mission statement, or what you just said, probably ought to be part of everybody's mission statement.
Yeah.
Except for the looking backward company.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, everybody can. Yeah. Oh, let's look at the next one here. This is good for Danielle asked about, brought up HIPAA. If you go down some of these are for credit cards. If you're processing credit cards, you get hit. But the HIPAA one here, you can see the penalty down below for HIPAA. It can be anywhere from $50,000 to $50 to $50,000 per record. So if you have 100 patients, it could cost you $5 million. Potentially. It depends upon your culpability. Okay, depends upon the business's culpability. So if you've done the best that you can do, you will not get fined by the government heavily, maybe not at all. Then you also have to worry about the victims, your patients whose information has been compromised. They have legal recourse against you as well, and that's why 60% of small businesses that get hit with a significant cyber attack go out of business within 6 months of that cyber attack. That's a statistic that's been around for a while, and it keeps getting, it seems to be holding true. It hasn't changed in a couple of years. That's all I have.
Okay, I needed to make one of these for Steve, and I forgot to. The newsletter, by the way, the subscribe to my website is no longer. There we go. Gabby's put our contact info in the chat. So I'm going to stop the share, and I'm going to ask again for anybody's questions. Oh, Dana, I love your little bird there. How cute, the little peach-cheeked little bird. That's the first time I got to see it. So, are there any other questions before we let Gabby steal the microphone back from us? Yes, Danelle, what's the question? If you'd like to unmute yourself and ask it, that would work too.
Are third party, like Zapier or however you pronounce it, are
Yes.
third party automations keeping your clients, your contacts information secure? And or if it's questionable that it's a third party, how does that fall back on you, the business owner, if you use one of those and they turn out not to be secure or selling your client's information?
Good question. So you can argue the case that you did everything you possibly could to protect yourself, and in doing that, you could put yourself in a position where you're not fined at all, and you're not found liable, because the argument is that nothing's 100% secure, and cyber criminals in general, I don't know if Steve will agree with this, but they're lazy. So they're going to go for the easy targets. They're going to go for the people that don't have a password on their router. They're going to go for the people that, are still using the Norton antivirus system or software that they got with their Windows 7 computer a few years back, and they're going to go after those people that are just wide open, and because that's easy, and it takes less energy, and the payoff is quicker. And so the return on investment, the ORI is much higher for them.
Something that you said Maybe there's a second part to that, and that is the other company responsible, the company supposedly providing the supposed security? And pretty much you look into their terms of service and so forth, and they're not
No.
responsible for anything.
No, we don't make the promise that we'll guarantee you 100% protection.
That's
There's
what I
some
noticed.
people out there that do that, and I suspect that they just carry enough insurance to cover that, and then they'll fight it. And they put probably some mitigating terms in the agreement that you sign. But no one can guarantee you 100% protection.
Well, and in the terms it asks you them, they ask for full editing ability to, add, delete, etc. to your, if whatever you're using with it, like the Google Drive, Google Contacts. So you kind of release that liability right there, don't you?
Pardon me, about Google?
Like Zapier, if you want to do email automation, they ask you permission to add, delete, whatever, your Google Drive and or your Google Contacts. So once you agree to that, isn't that somewhat releasing their liable portion of it?
Well, from a legal perspective, I am not their part of it, you say, or your part of it?
If you agree to their terms of kind of taking over your Google Drive and your Google Contacts, doesn't that mean you're saying, okay, yep, I release you?
It's here's my answer to that. It's
Yeah.
whatever the judge says.
Okay.
Well, that's true. It is kind of whatever. But if you release, are you asking whether you're releasing them of liability by agreeing to their terms?
Exactly.
Yeah, you are. So if they end up losing your data because they got hacked, you're going to have a hard time going after them.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's really, the people that really get hit with the HIPAA fines, to be very honest with you, are the people that are more blatant in their disregard for cybersecurity. I mean, I can't guarantee you that. I just can tell you that those are the ones that are going to get hit the hardest, to the ones, if they get hit at all, are the ones that have that. Usually what puts a business out of business is not the fines, it's the loss of reputation, the loss of clients or patients, and paying the ransomware as well, right? And sometimes they don't get their data back after paying the ransomware, or if they, or they only get part of it back. The statistics are really bad. I mean, they've improved because the people doing the ransomware, they want you to pay it, so they've gotten a little bit better at it over time. But statistically, you have less than a 30% chance of getting 100% of your data back if you pay.
That's frightening.
What?
Thanks for that, Stacy. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Steve.
No, that's I don't know what else to tell you other than that.
Thank
Do
you
we
so
have
much.
Do we have any other questions? We're hungry for questions. You might be hungry for lunch. We're hungry for questions.
Well, let me ask you, does anyone want my contact information to provide some information later after this?
Gabrielle put it up in the
Oh,
chat.
she did?
Yep.
I thought she just had yours. Maybe I was wrong.
Nope.
No, I put both of yours up there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Gabby.
You're very welcome.
Well, shall we turn the mic over?
It appears we have one last go around, guys. If anyone has any questions, please unmute your mics. All right, it looks like we do not have any additional questions, so I will go ahead and take over from here. So I would like to say thank you to Steve and Steve. We truly appreciate you both taking the time to share your expertise with us. For those of you who want more help with cybersecurity, or if you want any additional advice on other subjects related to business, please contact us for no-cost one-on-one consulting with one of our experts. Please review our website because we do have some really good up-and-coming events, and in order to view any of our of our previously recorded workshops, please take a look at our website. On the homepage, you will have a link to click on to go to our YouTube channel, as well as to register for any events that we have coming up. So this brings us to the close of our workshop today. Thank you again, Steve and Steve. And we here at the Women's Business Center wish all of you
Bye,
a
everyone.
fabulous day. And thank you for joining us. And we hope to see you again soon, everybody.
Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye. Wait, we've got a couple, let's see here. We just got, thank you both for such great information. This was incredibly helpful. That was from Danielle.
Thanks,
you're
Danelle.
welcome,
Thanks for
Danielle.
coming.
All right. Thank you guys. And thank you,
Thank-
everyone. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
okay.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.